Let's move on to COVID then, and Christine Anderson.
Yes, this is a range of COVID stories I've got. There's a lot of this that's happening all the time. I just picked a few that I thought were particularly interesting. Christine Anderson, we've covered in the past. She's often excellent on these issues, and she is again here today. So she tweets here, so this is how they're playing it now. The United States government posts a study on their official website which concludes that adverse effects from mRNA injections are due to the stress caused by anti-vaxxers. They will really stop at nothing. And she's got an abstract here. She tweeted out the abstract of the paper. So it's talking about the problems that they're seeing at vaccination clinics. This biological mechanism, reconstriction of veins, arteries and vessels under mental stress, is the most likely cause for where there has been blood clots, strokes, heart attacks, dizziness, fainting, blood vision, loss of smell and taste that may have been experienced shortly after vaccine administration. The extreme mental stress of the patient could most likely be attributed to the fear-mongering and scare tactics used by the various anti-vaccination groups. There are almost no words to describe the desperation of the lies that are coming out to try and explain why the vaccines are harming people. Right? This is simply hiding from the truth. It's gaslighting of the most blatant and unconvincing form. And very glad that Christine Anderson pointed that out.
I'm going to say, David, this is something a lot of people have picked up on. I just add that, of course, you've used the phrase gaslighting. What we've got here is applied psychology, once again, by the state, which is inverting reality in order to confuse people.
But they're not confusing people, and this is a beautiful thing. Now, we've got an example here. I don't think we've ever featured the Rangers Football Club annual general meeting before, so another first for the UK column. So this is well into the AGM, and lots of questions about football tickets and football performance. And then somebody stood up to challenge the board on their administration of the tyrannical government COVID policy.
Good morning, my name's Billy. First of all, you've had some tough questions today. My question's a little bit different. Firstly, I want to congratulate you on delivering positive results for Rangers. As a board, Rangers got to the European Cup final. We won the Scottish Cup and we got into the Champions League. However, my question to all the board, apart from Michael, is can you really say, hand on heart, that you showed honour to your fellow human being in 2021 when people like me got a blue letter like this and did not comply with tyrannical instructions from the Scottish National Party? They implemented digital ID via coercion and you complied. People like me who have supported Rangers from a young age were not allowed to come into the stadium. We were outside like dogs. That was segregation, it was discrimination. It's been
Can we move on to the next question, please? Murray, please.
And he was closed down. Not only was there no answer, he didn't even get to complete his question, although the idea that they'd failed to honour their fellow human beings, I thought was putting it beautifully. Now, what we saw there was the inability to answer the question. There was no answer. It was panic. There was, we're going to close you down. We're going to no platform you because you're off message. But there is no answer. There's no depth to what they've done. It's simple compliance with state diktats. And when they're called out that this was tyranny, this was discrimination, they have nothing to say for themselves. What did you make of that, gentlemen?
Well, it's a pretty good example of how it's done. But what I find so frightening, David, is the fact that we have supposedly intelligent guys, they all looked men, I think, on that board, but they can't make a decision about this because the state had got inside their heads and they couldn't actually think about the issue. This is why the government's use of applied psychology is so dangerous. and why we need to take the lid off it at every turn. It's very encouraging to see that we've got members of the psychiatric profession and psychology profession who are actually starting to speak out on it. But the real danger is that we now have people in positions of decision-making power where they can no longer think.
Yes. We've now got a couple of examples of ongoing discrimination. That was discrimination that happened in the past that is fortunately stopped, but the discrimination and the state tyranny has not stopped when it's come to COVID. So we've got one case here from America. An unvaccinated 14-year-old is rejected by a top hospital for life-saving surgery. She's a 14-year-old girl. She needs a kidney transplant, but she's been refused medical care by Duke University Hospital because she is unvaccinated. This is Clark County Today reporting. They continue. She was adopted by North Carolina Army veterans Chrissy and Lee Hicks in 2021 after being brought from the Ukraine to the United States in 2018. She has a genetic kidney condition. Now, Emily Grace has created a fundraising campaign to help with the cost, confirmed the hospital has refused to even treat her. And they continue that this isn't the only example. The previous cases, they say, have been so numerous, they don't even make headlines anymore. But they report here a case which went to court in Alberta, Canada, where the judge ruled that a woman did not have her rights violated when she was denied an organ transplant due to not being vaccinated against coronavirus. So this is the ongoing assault on liberty. It's nasty. It's tyrannical. It seems to have no limitation on how much harm it's willing to do or how callous it's willing to be. And this second example shows that. This is from New Zealand. We've got to hear a Guardian headline: health officials gain guardianship of a baby whose parents refused vaccinated blood transfusion. And BernieSpofforth here tweets, in New Zealand, the state owns your children now. The judge has ruled in favour of health authorities and has given them guardianship of a baby boy whose parents simply wanted unvaccinated blood for a transfusion, even though enough blood was available. State control is absolute. Another article on the same story from The Guardian describes how New Zealand parents say they will focus on supporting their son now the guardianship, now in the guardianship of his daughters through this life-saving operation. The parents' lawyer, Sue Gray, said in a Facebook post on Thursday morning the family will be prioritising a peaceful time for the baby until the operation and to support him through the operation. It appears the hospital is planning the operation today or tomorrow. Gray said they have security guards preventing baby W from leaving the ward. That's a nice touch. We have concluded that the government cannot afford anything to go wrong for baby W as the world is watching. He's likely to get the best possible care with the best and safest blood. So this illustrates why the ongoing campaign against us that COVID-19 represents is still happening. It's still happening all across the world, and that's why it's important that people stand up everywhere and resist. I was at and reported on a march in Perth at the end of October, and someone who was there sent me some video. We'll play the full thing in extra time, but I have a little clip here, and it's using the music of 5 Times August, a favourite of the UK column, who we've interviewed, and that interview is well worth watching. And it shows, I think, the joy and happiness that was visible that day and is visible in the resistance to this tyranny. And we've got to remember that. We've got to keep smiling and we've got to keep resisting, because the assault on our liberties, on everything that's reasonable, on everything that's right, is unrelenting. It's not stopped just because the mask wearing and mandates for COVID have been relaxed. It's ongoing, but it's targeting some of the most vulnerable.
to shame me and try to blame me. You can do your best to shut me up, but I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly.
And that just illustrates how important it is for all these people who came out, the people who make the videos, the people who made the speeches, one of whom Brian's going to be interviewing in the new year, and people like 5 times August, Brant Skistimus, who make the music. Everyone's making a contribution, and it's a lovely thing to be part of.
Okay, thanks for that, David. And I would just bring this up on screen. This is Vanessa Beeley's article just published on the UK Column website on the euthanasia programme in Canada. The headline is Canada's expanding euthanasia laws making the unthinkable thinkable again. So let's just take a couple of quotes from this. In 2016, Canada, with Justin Trudeau's administration in office, passed Bill C-4 legalising medical euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide, together referred to by Canada public bodies as medical assistance in dying, or MAID. By November 2020, more than 19,000 individuals nearing end of life had been voluntarily euthanized. It goes on to say, in March 2021, the law was amended by Bill C-7, which permits assisted euthanasia for patients whose death is not reasonably foreseeable. In 2021, it's estimated that more than 10,000 people were assisted in killing themselves in Canada. And then another quote here, in the case of Amir Farsood, has shocked Canadians into questioning the expansion of assisted dying into the realm of mental health, especially in the current unforgiving economic conditions globally. So, you know, we're seeing the slippery slope here. As I remember a number of years ago, whenever the discussion of euthanasia was being brought up in the UK politics, that, well, don't worry about it, it's only going to be in very specific cases, it's only going to be in the case of somebody who's really at the end of their life, that they're absolutely able to make the decision for themselves and so on. Whereas in Canada, we've seen this law passed over a number of periods of time, over a number of years, and we've seen that initially it was exactly as expressed in the UK, but then they expanded it to include people that maybe had made a decision in the past but were no longer actually considered competent to make a decision now, but they could still be killed. And now they're including people that aren't foreseeing the end of their lives, and now they're including people with mental health issues. And in fact, in that article, there's an instance, and I'm sure there are many more, of someone who was making the choice between being homeless and being dead. And in Canada, this is just going off the charts. In fact, I think I've got that one here. Sorry, I've missed one here. Let's bring that on. The Canadian Federal Expert Panel on the application of MAID for mental illness has recommended mental illness be grafted into the MAID framework. It's just incredible how quickly this is moving and how many people are being killed by it.
It is, Mike. Later in the news, we're talking about another subject where there's been a clear policy operating throughout the whole government structure, swallowing up huge amounts of money. What we've got to do is come back to who were the individuals who created this policy, who were the individuals that enacted the policy. It's not governments doing this ultimately, it's men and women in rooms who are making these decisions, and those individuals need to be identified and held to account. I think this is a fundamental point. But we'll also say that we know for the UK column audience, many of these topics are very challenging, and a lot of people find them difficult subjects to listen to read. But we're reporting reality. This is what is happening in the world and in UK, and if we're to deal with it, we've got to stand up and grip these subjects.